Hello everyone, it's me again, Linux Robot Geek, and this time we're going to end this series where we took a simple Flask application and deployed it with cloud native tools. Now, since this is going to be a very large and long finale, I decided to split it into 3 parts. This is part 1, where we are going to learn about Kubernetes, Grafana, Prometheus, Argo CD, and we are going to do an initial setup of everything. So let's begin. Welcome back. So before we can start deploying our application, we need to learn a couple things. First, let's learn about Kubernetes. Kubernetes, according to the main kubernetes.io website, is an open source system for automating deployment, scaling, and management of containerized applications. Basically, we're going to take an application that's been containerized with Docker, and we're going to deploy it with Kubernetes. I'll explain how this will work in our setup, and I will also show you how we are going to run it. Next, let's learn about continuous delivery. Now, I had planned to use deployment, but we are going to use delivery instead. Now, continuous delivery is an extension of continuous integration since it automatically deploys all code changes to a testing and/or production environment after the build stage. So, what this means is, if you remember in our last video with GitHub Actions, we took our application and basically made the changes. Those changes will be pushed to an application that does continuous delivery. And in that case, we are going to use Argo CD. Argo CD is a continuous delivery application that we are going to use to deploy our Flask application. As you can see in this GIF, that's what we are going to do. We're going to deploy it, then we're going to synchronize it. Now, in order to set this up, we need to set up a couple parameters. Now, going back to Kubernetes, we are going to be using kind. Now, you can use K3s or microK8s or any other flavor of Kubernetes you want. The reason I'm using kind is because it's much easier to set up, and I don't plan to push this to production. However, you can use any flavor you want. Now, after we deploy this application, we are going to monitor our application with Prometheus. Now, Prometheus uses a lot of monitoring services. It also uses something called PromQL, which allows us to query any kind of request for such as delay requests or anything, or even uptime, which I'm going to show you in the finale of the series. Then, of course, when we have the data, we are going to use Grafana. And Grafana is basically a dashboard application where we will be showing our application in a dashboard similar to something like this. So before we begin, I figured I would help you understand the basics of what we're going to do. Now I'm going to show you the necessary scripts we are going to use to set everything up. So let's get started. Welcome back. So this time we are going to set things up. Before I begin, I want to talk about kind. Now, I set up kind and I figured I'd show you how to do that. Now, if you're running Linux, you would basically do this. You curl the main script here, then you run chmod, make the kind file executable, then you move it to user/local/bin/kind, and it should run just fine. Then you need to create a cluster, and the way you do it is you do kind create cluster, and then you, for example, I created a cluster called demo, and then once I did that, I was able to do that. Now you can also delete a cluster with kind delete cluster, and then I installed kubectl as well. So let's get to the scripts, shall we? Now, I use Sublime for this, but you can use any other text editor. First, in order to install Argo CD, first I create a namespace called Argo CD with kubectl create ns Argo CD. Then I install Argo CD with kubectl apply and argo cd. F means forced, and then I install this YAML file. Then at the end after this, I will create a password with using kubectl n argo cd get secret argo cd initial admin secret o, and then create a JSON path with base 64 and then /d. However, or -d. However, I will not do that till the very end. Next, I will need Helm. In order to install Prometheus, I'm going to need Helm, so I'm going to curl the main website, the main install script, get Helm 3, and then use bash to install it. After that, I will create a namespace called monitoring. Then, using Helm, I'm going to add Prometheus community and then add this Helm chart. Then add a stable chart called charts.helm/stable. Then I'm going to run Helm repo update to update, then install Prometheus and Grafana using Helm install Prometheus community kube Prometheus stack namespace monitoring. Now, just to give you an idea, I have already done that. So if I do that, let me show you. I'm going to run kubectl get all n argo cd, and as you can see, let me expand it. I have the names of the pods here running, I have the services running, I have the deployment running, and I have the replica set running. Then I will do the same with monitoring. Once I do this, and you can see I also have the pods running here. Prometheus Grafana is running here, and this gives you the IP addresses. And I'm also running a daemon set, deployment, replica set, and a stateful set. Now, I already installed this before, so once you run these scripts, it should run properly. So that's it for this initial setup, and in part 2, we'll get things started with Argo CD.